Ray,
Peace, brother.
what's up, man?
Man, I'm good, man. How you doing?
Glad to be here with you. Man, I don't know. I think you are one of the premier leaders when it comes to education, not just in the city of Atlanta, but across the country. And let me tell you why. So we have a mutual colleague and friend said, you have to meet this brother, Ray James. He's leading the Ansley School. And I had some history with the Ansley School, but man, I walked into the building. I remember your faculty greeted me and I was waiting, and then we sat down and we had a really just robust and in-depth conversation. And the thing that stood out to me the most is your heart for students. I'm not just talking about strategically about, productivity and what the school can do, or I'm talking about you as an individual being in this space, being a Black man and leading in the ways that you lead, and you genuinely care for the students.
I appreciate that, bro. It's funny you say care, because so we just crafted some new organizational values, and instead of calling them values, we're calling them, this is how we care. Because this is what we care about. What you value is typically what you care about. And the first thing that we say a lot at work is we care for the people that are in our care.
Yeah.
Yep.
So firstly, before we go into the care part, what exactly is the Ansley School? How did you end up there?
Yeah.
And how is it uniquely positioned educationally, not just in the context of Atlanta, but nationally?
The Ansley School is a tuition-free private school for children who have or are currently experiencing homelessness. Our mission is to help break the cycle of generational poverty.
And the entire school are students who are actually unhoused.
Mm-hmm. So it's children who have or are currently. So
okay.
Yeah. And we keep our family so that we can provide multiple years of support. So the majority, not all, but the majority of our older students. So we're K through 6 this year. Added a new grade this school year, and we'll be K through 8.
Congratulations, bro.
Appreciate that, man. And we'll be K through 8 by the 27-28 school year. And so part of our programmatic approach is that once families come to us, whatever point in life, whether it's kindergarten or 6th grade, that they stay with us for multiple years so we can support and really help get to a point of stability. And our newest families are they are families who are unhoused and unsheltered, typically in either doubling up or in some type of transitional home, whether it be an actual shelter or extended stay motel. And then what we see with our program is that after, whether it be a semester or a year, we typically see our families be able to get housing, whether it be a voucher or whether it be an apartment, whether they get a job and are able to kind of get on their feet. But with our approach, because we understand the traumas associated with homelessness, we don't want to just say, all right, cool, you got on your feet.
Yeah, and push you out. Man, that's impactful for me to hear, right? Thank you for your work. And let me tell you why. So, I've been working in the space of homelessness advocacy for a number of years. And oftentimes people only relegate the subject of homelessness to adults. Mm-hmm. I was doing work here recently in the city of Louisville, organizing with some political leaders to craft a bill that would place homelessness liaisons on college campuses.
They need it.
Just so young adults would have a better way to onboard and access higher education. But even when talking to people in the city, whenever you say the word homelessness, it automatically goes to somebody standing on a corner who's mostly male, maybe African American or Black or brown. And people don't even think about homelessness when it comes to students. And I've done a lot of work in Title I schools. Last year, towards the end of last year, there was a report that said homelessness itself is increasing nationally by 18%.
Man, it is.
My question to you is what does that mean for students? What are some of how are you seeing this show up in regards to students? Because students never ask to be unhoused.
They never ask. A few things. One, there was a report that came out, the Atlanta Civic, I can't remember the exact entity that published the report, but they said that in the metro Atlanta area alone, there are 12,000 documented unhoused children.
12,000.
12,000. I didn't say 1,200.
These are not
12.
adults.
This is kids.
Wow.
Atlanta Mission, they have done some research, and they've noted that on any given night there are 1,300 unhoused students on any given night.
Right.
And they did a point in time count back in, I think it was last summer, and like I said, they documented that there are 12,000 unhoused children in the metro Atlanta area. Some of that is based on the real reality of like shelters and folks literally doubling up and not having any type of stability, but also some of that is based on the definition of homelessness according to McKinney-Vento Act, which is fixed, adequate, and regular housing. So if any one of those three is missing, then technically, according to that act, you are homeless. It is insane that there are children who experience these things, who live in shelters, who see the real trauma and the violence often. Yes. And by violence, I do mean physical violence, but also emotional violence. That
sometimes even sexual violence.
Yes, 100%. That they go through because of being, whether it be unsupervised, whether it be neglected, whether it be abused, whether it be left out, whether it be just not regarded, whether it be missing from school. It's a horrible reality that a lot of people don't often think about. And even from a pure statistic standpoint, I believe that 2% of public school students in America are unhoused. And while 2% may not seem like a lot, when you crunch down the numbers, you're talking like 1 million.
Oh, you're talking about millions. And for those people who don't know, McKinney-Vento is actually the first federal policy that came out in 1987. Correct. That acknowledged homelessness as a national crisis, like a national crisis. And at first it extended to all, but then it got rolled under education, and it specifically focused on children. And the policy itself was, promising that every child who was unhoused had access to school, being able to register, being able to access meals, being able to have some of the supports that they need. I want to ask you, right, because when I walk into schools today, currently, we're living in a socially, politically charged environment. I talk to educators on a day-to-day who say, I still have students who are coming here and maybe they woke up in a motel. Maybe they are living out of a car and they still don't have the proper supports that they need. How are you seeing the impact with student engagement, actual in the classroom? Because we're talking about on a practical level. We can talk about the data, all that stuff, but man, it harms social emotional learning for a student. How are you seeing that as a leader in the school?
I see it in a few different ways. One of the biggest ways that I see it, and this is something I told a friend of mine, I would almost want to study it. So something that, I think about a lot as it relates to adults who experience homelessness, especially chronic homelessness, is the psychological impact of being unsheltered. And from just a Maslow's hierarchy standpoint, like shelter is a basic need. Whether you are a human, whether you are an animal, you need shelter to survive. And when you boil that down and start thinking about kids, especially with kids who understand and become conscious of their the cycle of poverty and or what's happening around them, what I see a lot is with our younger kids, you see very, very heightened emotions. A lot of times inability to regulate, which is why our attention to care and our focus on meeting them, not just at a lip service where they are, but truly taking the time to get to know every single kid, every single story. But with our older kids, it's very scary because I've worked in enough public and charter schools to know that by the time you hit fourth grade, kids starting to turn up. And you see a lot of energy, whereas at the Ansley School, it's almost the opposite. And you see almost them become like a shell of themselves. And I do wonder if it is the consciousness of like, no, I understand where I live. I understand like what my parents are going through. I see it. And like I said, they're not as expressive. They're not as outgoing. They don't reach as much as I see kids, typical kids around that age. And I do wonder, like I said, we're K through 6 right now, and I do wonder what will it look like and what will we need to do, over this year, next year, and once our oldest kids are in 8th grade, to ensure that they're not shells of themselves, but they're full and they're whole.
Like they have an opportunity to dream, man. Like earlier this year, thank you for allowing me to come and speak to the students for Black History Month. You said something that stood out to me. You said that the students in the school needed to see representation and what resilience and overcoming looks like, because you have a dream in the work that you do, like where you want to see your students become future lawyers, doctors, head of school, principals, educators, and they are not limited by the circumstances and the realities that they are facing right now today, which is really important because, man, dreams are important. The ability to wake up in the morning and say, I'm worthy enough to dream of a future that's possible.
Yes.
When that's stripped away by, the impact of homelessness or being socially stigmatized because of your lack of an address or any of those things, man, it can really impair not only a student's engagement in the classroom, but their ability to dream. What did you mean by you wanted them to dream?
So for a lot of our kids, based on home circumstance and home life, because it is a generational impact, a lot of our families experience homelessness, experience foster care. And so you're talking 20, 30, sometimes 40, 50 years of family weight that kids are feeling. And what I see our kids showing up and needing, to your point around dreams, is they need exposure. They need to be able to see that, hey, I have gone through this and look at where I'm at. Because oftentimes we see the, Tyler Perry's and, if you know enough, the Jimmy Butlers of the world, these mega celebrities, these people that are almost unreachable for kids in terms of like, can I achieve that? Yeah. And they don't often see people, everyday people, folks like me and you, who can be a testimony and a reality of like, look, I've gone through this and here is what I did. Here is my path, honestly, just to kind of mention it, from dropout to doctorate. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
appreciate the book.
But this is how I did it, and they don't often see that enough in terms of everyday success. And it's often outside of their reality. And the biggest thing that I think about a lot for our school is our kids need to be exposed to so much, because because we're not a boarding school. I think about it so much. If we were a boarding school, we could maybe combat some of the things that they see, but our kids go home, and wherever home is, whatever that may be, whether it is at a shelter, whether it is in a home with a friend, and now it's 15 people in a 2-bedroom, whatever the home is, we
being
have
yelled at because you asked for something to eat and you don't have any food at the house.
And so we have to ensure that they are exposed to love, they're exposed to positive imagery, and they're exposed to everything that can possibly make them dream in a different way. We try to make sure that our extended learning programs are robust, everything from we've done songwriting with kids, we've done dance therapy, we do scouts with kids, scouting with kids, we're doing a financial literacy course with our 6th graders this year. We're doing
exposure.
Yes, just robust exposure, because when I think about the things that helped me as a kid that grew up rural North Louisiana, not really I didn't grow up experiencing homelessness, but I definitely didn't grow up seeing examples of anything beyond this small town. And in a small town, you get trapped, almost like in the way that I think our kids who experience homelessness, they get trapped in a mindset of homelessness. The thing that helped me was 1, traveling, but also 2, exposure. I was in every single club, I did every single thing, and I realized kind of early on, I didn't necessarily like school, but I like doing all this stuff that I could do through school. And so when I think about our kids and how I found success, while I do want them to be academics, I want them to be thespians, I want them to be all types of Rhodes Scholars and everything, I also want them to be full humans that have dreams, have desires, have hopes, have goals that are robust and that are rich and that are that show that anything is possible. And I know that's a cliche statement, but our kids, I said something to my staff the other day that I think about a lot, that a lot of people don't think about as it relates to our school, and I have to check people on it sometimes. children experiencing homelessness deserve excellence, not charity.
That's right.
And when I think about our school and the type of exposure, a lot of times people do it from a charity standpoint. It's like, it's just good enough.
Yeah.
Like, they
Just
don't need
good
all
enough.
of that. And like, you know, and even to pull it back a little bit to McKinney-Vento, not to like go in too much, but on a practical level, and I'm saying this as a person that's been a board member of a small charter school, at a practical level, that policy is part of the reason why I joined the Ansley School, because I learned what implementation looks like, which, you know, a law is a law, a policy is a policy, but unless it's implemented with fidelity and followed up and then reported out on, and like you can actually understand what's happening. Oftentimes in schools, what really happens because of the lack of people power in schools, in terms of like, we just don't have enough people in schools with kids, is that policy turns into a district has to have somebody, a homeless liaison.
Right.
That homeless liaison is typically, depending on the size of the district, you may have 1, 2, maybe 3 if it's a very large district.
That's responsible for tens of thousands of.
And so they're assigned to multiple
students.
schools. Most schools don't have a placed social worker in them. And so oftentimes what that means in a reality is you have an overworked and overburdened assistant principal who already has to do so much logistical work inside the school, that also is the school's McKinney-Vento liaison with the district. And from an implementation standpoint, literally schools can get McKinney-Vento funding if they have a few things in place. One, you got somebody that's the liaison. Check.
That's right.
You have signage on your front door that is basically an alert if you're experiencing homelessness. But if you've ever been inside of a school, you know there's so many pictures and things on the front door. And then even more chaotic, you have to have signage on your website for parents. If you've ever navigated a public school's website, it is the most chaotic thing that I have ever done. And I worked in a bunch of public schools. And
it is not easy to navigate.
If you hit those 3, literally you are in compliance with the law, and you can get grants based on the poverty count in your school, based on what you report about homelessness. But it's oftentimes goes back to a lack of care and or lack of visibility, and oftentimes kids end up being the casualty of circumstance. They end up suffering at no fault of their own, but simply because they were born into a certain circumstance and their school did not do all it could to make sure that they achieved at the same rate as the most privileged, most blessed, most opportune children in America. Yeah,
man, you brought up a lot of great points. We talked a little bit about McKinney-Vento. Currently, right now, we've seen recent policy shifts that are impacting not only the Department of Education. I've seen reports where higher learning institutions are doing massive layoffs of professors and funding cuts, educators being reshuffled around, school systems, not just here in Atlanta, but all across the country. I've even talked to educators who are fearful of the type of funding that will help resource students who are unhoused or living in extreme poverty. One of the things that we've been doing as an organization is building resource centers within the schools that equip social workers and counselors and principals to have these resources in one classroom. So we go in and we retrofit a classroom, doing the work with our Love Beyond Walls. And man, to hear principals say it's a blessing to have a resource center in the school where we're not, having to make 100 calls and end up not reaching anyone or, trying to find resources that's drying up. After school programs are being, underfunded and cut. Federal dollars are being halted. Man, where are we? And how are you seeing this through the lens of an educator and, an educational professional in your current context?
So, and I'll break it down a few different ways. So one, from a real life budget standpoint, last school year, which technically ended June 30th from a fiscal cycle standpoint, we got 1.3% of our annual budget from federal funds. 1.3. And that was inclusive of Title 1, 2, and 4. And I had a call.
And those resources are important because
it allows us to do operational things, like we need curriculum, we need digital screens, we need access to online platforms, we need paper, we need the basic necessities of a school, which is that funding is critical. And something that is a real thing that you mentioned, poverty rate nationally and in the state of Georgia has increased.
Yes,
which means that the allotment of federal dollars is now spread even more because there are more people who need these funds. And I had a call with the pooling district that we work with, and they let me know that instead of it being 1%, and I didn't tell them this because they weren't talking about my school budget, they were just talking about the literal dollar amount. But for this year, that amount will be 0.4% of my budget.
Wow.
Because the poverty rate has gone up, and so the amount of schools that have children who experience homelessness, children who are in chronic poverty has risen. But the bigger thing that I think about as it relates to federal funding being cut and or being chaotic right now is, one, a lot of my background is around extended learning and how that shows up and how you can credential it in schools and how you can change assessments to be more holistic and robust to really be authentic demonstrations of learning.
Right.
A lot of that comes from the OST space, the out of school time space. And when I think about, literally, I mentioned it, I didn't necessarily like school. I liked all the stuff that school gave me access to, which was oftentimes out of school time. It's like all the things that I can do, all the extracurriculars that really made me dream in a way that...
Which are critical because they need funding.
They need funding and
exposure itself has to have a space that is, creates the type of funding where kids can go and be exposed to those things. Is that what I hear you say?
Yes, 100%.
Yeah. Okay.
But the bigger thing that I think about for our kids who experience instability, who experience just chaos, is our federal government is in a state of chaos right now that is modeling at a national level for kids who are learning about government, learning about democracy, learning about, equality and equity and how should I become a viable citizen in this country. And when I think about what's being modeled nationally, it truly, one, I think a lot of kids are losing hope in democracy, which is scary for our country and where we'll be in 20 years. And then two, for children who experience chaos outside of school, the fact that they are seeing chaos on a national level right now is, I can't imagine how unsettled they are knowing that, one, I'm experiencing this at home, but also if I turn on the TV,
I'm seeing it.
This is everywhere.
It's being communicated through media that you're not important.
Yes. It's being, man,
you know what I mean? Like it's everywhere. Not so for a student who is unhoused, it's not only the lived experience, but it's what we call visual rhetoric. It's what's being spoken to you by the imagery and the commentators who are on television talking about these things, which directly impacts you and your existence. That can breed hopelessness.
Yes, and that is one of my biggest fears of our time in this historical context. It's 2025. If this is looked at in 40 years, this is 2025. I'm very nervous about what our country will be in the next 10 years because kids are losing hope. I'm so fearful of it because like I said, when you think about it from a funding standpoint, it's scary because literally you need money to do things. But then when you think about it from just a mindset and a belief in something that, the reason that America works is because all of us at some level believe that if I work hard, I will achieve. At the Ansley School, we exist because we want to try school differently with the belief that if you work hard, you will succeed. But when our kids look at the country that we're in, that belief is being pulled away and is honestly being told explicitly that you don't matter. Like when I think about
and that's one of the reasons why the Department of Education was created, right?
Yes, to prevent things like that.
To prevent things like that. I mean, it was a promise to access to education, civil rights being protected, funding for students who come from low socioeconomic neighborhoods. It was a promise to the populace, specifically those who have been historically marginalized, that you would have access.
We're going to make sure you're good.
We're going to make sure you're good. And what I hear you saying is you fear that some of the breakdown of all of this is going to breed more hopelessness in students. Where do you think that leaves students in the future?
I'm gonna toss that question back to you, man. Because I think about it, I honestly, where the word that came to mind was anarchy, and I know that's a scary word, but when you talk about kids, and I'm a person that studied political science in college, so I know enough about politics. I've interned on the Hill, and when I think about like the belief that I had that like I can possibly be successful, when you talk about stripping that from kids and making them believe that America doesn't work, you're talking about raising up a generation of people who truly won't vote, who truly won't engage in civic practices that we know as normal. And I don't understand or know where our country will be if we start to remove these simple beliefs in how this, I hate to say it, how the system works. That ultimately, if I do my part, I work hard, I will achieve some success. So, what, I mean, I'm gonna toss that back to you. What do you think?
I share in that weariness. You know, my story is unique in that, you know, I had educators like yourself. I remember an educator, her name is Miss West. I had dropped out of high school, experienced brief moments of homelessness, living out of my car as a teenager, the whole nine. And somehow my mom worked it where I could go back to school as a fifth-year senior. I talk about this in my book, and it was a really embarrassing moment. But Miss West, I don't know if this lady was just like trauma informed. This was long before these phrases were being talked about. But she noticed me in a way that caused her to pull me aside one day. I was in her 10th grade geometry class as a fifth-year senior, or the politically correct term is fifth-year persister.
Correct.
She pulled me aside and she says, I want you to use my classroom as a sanctuary. Wow. One of the first times I ever felt safe in education. She would talk to me about my future, my hopes, my dreams. And this was largely in part in the context of like, I was experiencing what I label as the trifecta of barriers. Political injustice, right? Because neighborhoods and cities that have high population of Black people, concentrated poverty in certain areas was, politically driven by public policy. You had trauma, right? And then you had some of then you had some of the barriers of impoverishment themselves. So like, I call that the trifecta, you know, policy, trauma, and poverty, right? That educator gave me space to dream. And the reason I talk about Miss West is because, man, we need more people like that who are championing safe spaces for students to dream. Educators can be impactful in a number of ways with the words that they speak to children, with the ways they are creative in creating the exposure for children. I mean, even if you don't have the funding to take a class somewhere, you can bring that somewhere to the classroom. 100%. Educators have the ability to mold minds in a way that gives them the courage to dream beyond their social location, beyond their spaces. I mean, I see that evident in the work that you're doing. And I think, you know, for me, I know that we're dealing with a lot of things socially and politically, but I still believe in the power of, you know, the collective impact of people helping people. I believe that we are the ones that we're waiting on. I believe that we have the power to sow the seeds of courage into the next generation where, you know, some student may see the state of the world and say, I need the right policy. I need to become the one that organizes to create the type of change. I need to be the one that starts another Ansley School. I need to be that one. And I think, you know, with all of what we're faced with now, I think we do need courageous educators and courageous people of goodwill that are standing in the gap. You know, it's not one educator that's helping the student overcome. It's a community of education. It's a community of care, like you were going back to. I think the other thing too is like, we need to think more innovatively about how we use excess. We live in one of the most, materially rich spaces in the world. I was just reading an article not too long ago. It was talking about affordability and the housing shortage and things like this. And this sociologist was talking about we need to rethink how we are using space. It's not that it's a shortage, it's that we want more excess. And the excess within itself can be repurposed to solve some of our challenges.
Man, that's good.
You know, and I think we have to have the excess conversation. How are we pulling together our resources? How are we dreaming or creating third spaces, right? What would it be like to, have some creativity, to have mobile spaces that come to schools to create that exposure? And it's not always about kids traveling, but what if they walked outside to have some of these experiences, And I think it's going to be centered around collaboration, man. I would like to see more of that. And my fear when it comes to the nonprofit space is that the current environment, the political funding cuts, all of these things are going to force nonprofits to be more selfish. And what we need to do is think of how we can collaborate more so we can find more strength.
Yes, I fully agree. And that's something I try literally to do as much as humanly possible. To your point, one of the reasons why I'm blessed to be in this seat is I do feel like God created me to be a connector of people. Yeah. And by people, I do mean people. Not always resources, not always material things, but people. Which
is one of the greatest resources.
Yes, people. I don't think anything in this world happens without people. Like when you think about the biggest buildings, when you think about the greatest care, it's a person that made that happen. Like, we may have used a tool, but it is a person at the end of the day. And I try to make sure that our school is a space where every individual can feel like they have a opportunity to impact the school in some type of way, whether it's with their literal contributions or whether it's with their in-kind services or whether it's with their day-to-day, operating services to make us be able to do what we do. And just to double tap your point, we have to find ways to collaborate, because if we don't, there are going to be nonprofits that exist right now that won't be around in 5 years.
Yes. And the people that will miss out the most are the ones that need the impact.
The ones that need it the most.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, man. Another question I have for you is how can your work with Love Beyond Walls, from a policy standpoint, impact K-12 legislation?
Man, I think one of the biggest things that we are committed to is narrative change. The ways in which we talk about homelessness as it relates to policy has to be more empathetic. Most of the people who are in power, that have the power to write policy, aren't necessarily proximate to those who are having the lived experience. And the other thing too is I think a lot about stigma as it relates to homelessness, stigma as it relates to not feeling that certain populations are worthy enough to receive some of the supports needed. That all has to do with like the ways that people think about the population, the type of language that is used to address the population, the way that ordinances and laws are created to publicly sanitize or exclude the population. This theory of deservedness, right? Who is worthy and who is unworthy? Well, in most instances, people who are considered or deemed unworthy of receiving supports are those who are impoverished and unhoused. And how do we even change the language and the narrative around it to build more empathy towards the population? I specifically think that storytelling, narrative change, lobbying, organizing of educators, sharing stories, continuing to put it out there, because, you know, the noise within itself pushes these narratives aside, where these narratives aren't heard enough. And the distance itself creates the type of disdain towards the population of students where nothing actually happens. I'll say this: I was partnering with the SCLC years ago. I was talking to Dr. Lafayette, who was a part of SNCC, March with King, and he asked me a question. We had shot this interview with Dr. Lafayette, and he posed this question. He says, "Who lobbies for the poor?" Who's right now in Washington, D.C. making sure the stories are heard?
Yeah.
When was the last time you ever heard, as my friend Jay Bailey says, a business case for poverty? You know, when you think about some of these things, you have to ask, why is that the case? Why aren't we sharing these stories enough? And why is certain narratives about this population that continues to suppress and oppress this population rising to the top more than the stories of the lived experiences? And I'll even say this: when was the last time you heard poverty at the center of political debates? You know, just think about the last 10 years. How do we even talk about this subject? And why don't we talk about it enough in ways where M.L. King's idea of, you know, eliminating poverty, when he was talking about the triple evils, is the center of our conversation? Poverty should not be a footnote. No. It should be central to the conversation and what we're working to achieve.
I used to think that racism was like the end all be all. You know, I was kind of radicalized while I was in college, reading a bunch of stuff about history and race. And I was like, yo, until we fix racism, like this world ain't gonna move forward. But when I think about everything that I've learned and everything that I've lived over the past 15 years, while racism is often like a surface level hindrance, what really drives racism and what really drives, in my opinion, continued oppression across the board is the oldest. It is poverty. It's the most common thing in any society that weighs down and burdens politics, it burdens education, it burdens healthcare. Everything, it taps back to poverty. And until we, at a legislative standpoint, try to think about economic redistribution and try to think about ways that we can really put a policy lens on poverty, I say it at school all the time, there's no playbook for homelessness.
No, it's none. Because it's so complex, and like, when you talk about poverty, it is the root cause. It's why we have food deserts.
Literally.
It's why we have dialysis centers in predominantly Black and brown communities. It's why there are liquor stores, there's divestment, there's dilapidated buildings. It's why crime,
it's the driver of crime.
It's the impoverishment.
Yes.
You strip people of access. You expect them to survive, and then dream in what you say is the land of the free, the home of the brave, and give them nothing. And expect them to flourish. How's that possible? When we think about gardens, we don't even, like when you think about a garden, you pulling out weeds because weeds can contaminate the environment and choke out the life in the whole thing. So why do we expect, if we looked at communities that are highly impoverished as gardens, and we look at those gardens as being contaminated by, lack of access to healthcare, poor education, poor buildings, food deserts, not enough space occupationally where you could have some type of upward mobility. All of these things that can be considered as weeds that's driving down the lifespan, the morale, the dreams, the hopes.
Broken windows.
How do we expect people to flourish in that type of environment? And then we have language to blame the people who are in those environments for being in those spaces.
To criminalize it, and then once it's criminalized, cool, now it's generational. But also, from a medical standpoint, it becomes very generational.
Yes.
And then becomes entrapped, and it's so hard for folks to move on. So kind of last question I got for you is like, how, if you can sum it up in a minute, how in the world did somebody like you get to the point that you're at? Knowing that everything we've talked about over the last few minutes is literally all the barriers that you were up against. Like,
yeah, I think
that way I can go and tell my kids this too.
Yeah, man, which is one of the reasons I highly respect you, other educators who are doing this work. I think one, it's spiritual. Had it not been for the grace of God,
Yeah.
I would not be here having a conversation with you. I think two, it was a community of wealth. And I'm not talking about wealth economically. I can name Mr. Eason, who helped pay for my college tuition and was the same man that walked my wife down the aisle to give her her hand to me in marriage. And me and my wife will be married 19 years in less than 3 weeks, bro. I can talk about Miss West. I can talk about Mr. Muhammad, who was a substitute teacher, who told me I had a knack for writing and speaking, who was a substitute teacher, is now a psychologist now.
Wow.
I could tell you about the many educators who are not my own family members, but people who saw me, and not just saw me for the sake of seeing me, but saw the greatness in me before I could see it in myself. These people shared their wisdom. It was my church community, a faith community of being connected to men and women who were able to mentor me. I mean, 20 years my senior when I was just a young man, telling me that I had what it took. Sometimes for a person to emerge out of poverty, experience homelessness, have trauma, all those things, sometimes you gotta live on borrowed courage.
Yeah.
And these people were in my life at a time where I did not have courage to believe in myself,
Yep.
but I was able to borrow their faith in me, borrow their courage and their belief in me until I was able to believe it for myself. You know, if you injure yourself, that's why they give crutches. If you are limping, that's why someone comes alongside you and helps you to walk. I mean, we're sitting on chairs with an equal balance of legs. I mean, when I think about the importance of how people have been my safe haven, my community, and the reason why I stand, I still believe that to this day. And that's why I'm fighting so hard to advocate and to say we need to crowd love people back to wholeness. We need to crowd love people into their dreams. And I'm not just talking about crowdfunding as the tech space, and I'm talking about what does it take for a group of people to love someone unconditionally, to accept them in all their flaws, their lived realities, and say this is a safe enough space where you can continue to make mistakes, fall, stumble until you become who you're able to be. And I had that. Man. And I fear that many people don't have that space.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, man. And I would say in closing, like, so one of the reasons why I'm writing about education at this point, because education literally saved my life. I think I told you this months ago. Education is a powerful tool. It gave me the ability to dream beyond my environment, to have exposure to books and authors and content that expanded my articulation of not even only understanding who I was as a person, but my environment, the state of the world, being able to critically think. Education gives you the ability to achieve any and everything that is possible, man. And I would say the last thing is personal resilience.
Yeah.
My dad, who passed away last year, used to always tell me that you have to be forever forward. And I just think watching him and my mother and their resilience and overcoming their set of circumstances gave me, something in me to say, I'm always going to be forever forward. And I think that is something that is developed as you have the community around you that is telling you constantly, you can do this, you can make it, you can get a bachelor's degree, you can get an associate's degree, you can get a master's degree. I have 2 master's degrees and a Ph.D. Never thought I would ever be in a place to be able to hold any degree. I was working in the back of a warehouse, bro, practicing public speaking to boxes. But I had the dream, and I had a community that said my dream was possible. And that's why I'm here today.
Man, shout out to people, man.
Shout out to people, bro. Thank you for talking to me, bro.
Thank you, brother, for the invitation, man. Yeah, I appreciate you.
Yeah, I appreciate you.